Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are about to start the second part of our meeting today. When we originally had planned this, the idea was going to be that we were just going to do some board business, which we took care of in the first half. But since we had originally planned this time, some things changed. Specifically, there were some announcements that were made by the governor. One was about the vaccines now being available to Group 1B, which includes school staff. The second was her encouraging schools to attempt to go back to some level of face-to-face education by March 1st. So because of that, instead of waiting until our normally scheduled February board meeting, we decided to add some time on to our meeting today to cover that. Before we get to the presentations, the board decided to reopen citizen participation. So what we're going to do is go back into citizen participation to read additional comments that came in after the first comment session had closed at roughly about 10 o'clock in the morning. So at this point, I would ask that we move into citizen participation.
Okay, continuation of citizen participation. Do you want me to read the comment about citizen participation or to just continue on with the comments?
I think it would be safe for us to do that, read that comment again.
Sure. So citizens wishing to address the board on agenda and non-agenda items for action can complete a virtual blue card that will be posted at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday, January 23rd, 2021 on the district's website. Forms received by beginning of the citizen participation will be read by the board secretary. The board might not be in a position to respond to non-agenda items. Therefore, speakers should not anticipate an immediate response to their comments or questions. For the benefits of all concerned, do not mention the names of students or school district employees. Please keep your comments as brief as possible. The board president reserves the right to limit times. So continuing on with the comments, we have comment from Mrs. Khadija Al-Asri of Dearborn. She said, as an employee of the district, I cannot support for returning of students to school at this time. As a district, we have worked out many of the issues of online instruction and many of the students are benefiting from it. Even in the best year without a pandemic, we have children who we have difficulty reaching throughout the instruction. And just like any other school year, we have processes in place to try to reach those children like we do now, including our MTSS process. Teachers have not had the proper access to the vaccine, and we are being put at grave risk as children cannot be expected to self-regulate their exposure to a deadly virus. I have personally checked for available appointments within 3 hospital systems over 10 times a day and have not found any available appointments for me to vaccinate. Even after vaccinating, teachers and all school staff would need to receive the second dose and wait for a window of time to be protected from the deadly virus. Comment 11 by Mrs. Khulud Bezzi Jamil of Dearborn saying, Lori School is a very old building. What changes or repairs will be done to ensure that my kids will be safe? My family has been part of the school for over 15 years. I have reached out countless times asking questions about the building and have been told that they are working on a plan and even considering rebuilding. Now it is more important than ever to ensure that our kids will be safe and it will be in a safe facility. What exact changes will be made in places like classrooms, cafeteria, gymnasiums, hallways, etc. I have witnessed firsthand the result of shortage in hiring custodial staff. I'm very confident that the staff will do a great job in ensuring that students will follow the guidelines pertaining to social distancing or anything as we parents have been doing for the past 10 months. But what 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 about all the things in the building that is not in their hands? When will Lori finally became become a priority in the district? 12 comment from Mr. Nasser Sharif of Dearborn saying, I'm writing this on behalf of many community members in Dearborn who are highly concerned about the school board potentially buckling to the pressure of politics of this pandemic and forcing schools to reopen as a result. Despite what Governor Whitmer has recommended, there is a lot of to consider before reopening schools to avoid community spread. The plans that I have viewed online do not effectively address spread, especially considering kids will be on their own at the bus stops, on the buses, and taking off their masks while they eat. By returning children to school, you are putting all of those children and their families at a serious risk just to deliver subpar in person instruction. The costs far outweigh the benefits in this situation. Also, the governor has explicitly stated that the districts who had not reopened will not be penalized. We have an anonymous comment regarding also reopening the schools and asking questions of how children would feel um, of going to school as well and spreading the virus to others. Um, and saying that coming back and forth is ridiculous. We have a comment from Mr. Ethan Hatwig of Dearborn saying, currently with the overcrowding that normally happens at DHS, there there really is not an efficient way to properly social distance. Even with having 6 feet of markers along the floor, there is simply not enough actual space to fit people if they were peppery spaded out. I think they meant properly spaded out. Anyways, most of the people that I attend school with would not really care about the following or following those guidelines and would only end up helping spread COVID, which would only end up nullifying any plans for reopening of schools for the foreseeable future. 15th comment from Mrs. Huda H, saying, as working parents of an Etzel Ford High School student and a Laurie Middle School student, we are concerned that returning children to school at this point would only hinder the quality of education offered. As parents, we feel students have finally acclimated to virtual learning from home. To return them to a hybrid program or in-person learning with 14 days of vacation scheduled between now and June will only delay both students and teachers in the education process for the remainder of the year. Both our children, your students also feel the same way. Furthermore, both your students are concerned for their full safety until vaccination for COVID is more readily available. We send this message to you on behalf of our entire family. We as a family do not feel comfortable to return to in-person learning for the reasons listed. Please choose to continue schooling as it is and improve on what we have in place right now. We have also a comment from first grade teacher um, talking about the original plans that we have in place um, and saying that they have given up family vacations and holidays with their families to remain safe from COVID. Um, they say that it's fair to return to in person once a teacher had at least had the opportunity to receive vaccines. 17th comment from me, Teresa of Dearborn, says, I feel that since the students will be starting Zoom in the morning, almost like regular school, that we should stay this way. I understand that students should be in school, but I believe we should wait and see. I've seen in other communities where students are in school or hybrid learning, where they had to close the school again because of cases. I feel that that does more harm to students. Thank you for listening to my comments. Stay safe and mask up. Mrs. Ahmed of Dearborn saying, I support our students returning to school with appropriate safety cautions as they are in dire need of socialization with their peers and they learn better with an in-person environment. When our students return to lower school, it would be helpful for parents of all grades went back at the same time. We have a third grader and a seventh grader, and I don't want to leave one alone while transporting the other to and from school. Thank you for your time. We appreciate the hard work that you do. Mr. Ahmed Al Mauri of Dearborn saying it seems that Board of Education is winging it, quote unquote, when it comes to bringing students back into the classroom. We love to stay where we are, following science and going by the data. But reopening schools in March is not doing that. Even if every single person gets vaccinated, the immune response is not robust enough to ensure no transmission of the virus at the scheduled date reopening. Also, we must still abide by social distancing and proper facial coverings with masks. It is impossible that social distancing be met by children riding on buses, and students eating in the classrooms and cafeteria will not be wearing masks. This goes against the science and data introduced to us by the CDC guidelines on COVID 19. This appears to be a cheap and quick approach of sending students back into the classrooms without addressing the issue at hand. Majority of the population is not vaccinated and will not be vaccinated within the next 6 months. In my pharmacy alone, there are over 16,000 patients on the wait list to receive the vaccine, with priority given to healthcare workers and first responders, and second priority to the geriatric population. The Board of Education will be responsible and should be held responsible for any further spread and spikes of the COVID 19 virus if this motion is not dismissed. Mrs. Asmahan Mashrah of Dearborn saying, we are asking you to please consider the safety of your students, staff, and community members. Changing the guidelines of returning or of return to an easier fit so that the district reopens is not a sentiment of students first. We need to remain steadfast at looking at the data in our district. Currently, we are at an 8.6% positivity rate. Dearborn continues to be an area where the virus infection rates and spread is high. We need to consider the safety of our children and our staff when thinking about reopening. We know that teachers are working their butts off under this pandemic. Putting them and their students in harm's way does not benefit anyone, especially when we now have strands that are transmitting much easier and faster than the first COVID strand. Students and teachers are not good to each other, dead or sick. We ask that the guidelines we set in the beginning of the year that they stay the same and that you continue to look for at the data in our community to make decisions that are science-based. You cannot expect your teachers to be data-driven educators in the classroom if you refuse to use the same logic. We ask that there is time between grade levels of hybrid returns so that we can assess and establish information and data regarding the spread of the virus when it does happen. As of right now, the hybrid plan does not show that. Please stay closed until data allows us to go back safely and until vaccines are easily accessible to teachers and students. Mrs. JH of Dearborn, I'm really nervous and stressed about in-person instruction for many reasons. I even thought of quitting teaching altogether. One reason is that I put my family at risk. Both of my parents have pre-existing conditions. I can't imagine putting them at risk. I think we should continue remote until June 2021. Plus, there is a structure right now with virtual learning. If we go back, there will be disruption just teaching routine and the new norms, so that takes away from instruction. Says Haidar of Dearborn saying, how are we moving forward with this virus? Mrs. Muna Mashrah didn't mention the city as part of as a as a parent and educator. I'm disheartened and dismayed that the board is considering the district's request to change restart criteria to make it easier to return in person at the expense of the safety of staff, students, and their families. Although the governor's order recommendation recommends a return to in-person March 1st, it does not require it, and instead it leaves it to local boards to determine when it is safe to do so or to return. In the past, the board has held steadfast in its conviction to use science and data in making determinations regarding our safe return to schools, and I hope that you all continue with that conviction. The board has previously and consistently maintained that positivity rates above 5% were too dangerous for a safe return to in-person, including learning labs. So what has changed since October? Nothing but outside pressure. Our county rates are currently at 8.6%. Those metrics continue to show a starting reality that COVID-19 continues to plague our community in high numbers. Ignoring our reality by changing the metric used does not change the real threat of COVID that we still face. Please do not jeopardize the safety of our staff, students, and their families to appease politics. We have already lost a teacher due to COVID-19. What will happen when we all go back with rates this high and with no access to vaccination? Only more loss and trauma will await us. Our numbers are still decreasing. Have patience and continue to use data to guide us and stick to the metrics that have been approved. We are looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. Please make sure that we all make it to see that light. Miss Jennifer Price of Redford said, I have been impressed with the Board of Education throughout this pandemic, and I'm so disappointed that they are considering changing the safety metrics to return to schools now. Our numbers are still high in Dearborn, higher than 5%. That has been used this school year. The vaccine is becoming more available, but many are not able to get their first appointments because they are not near us or gone before we can get in line. With a vaccine so close, why not wait until those that want to get it are able to get both doses? Rushing back to in-person learning because the governor recommends it does not seem like a good reason. Use the same caution that you have been using for this school year and keep your students or keep your staff and students safe. Mr. Hussein Haidara of Dearborn saying, I live with my elderly parents and I think online is the safest for right now. My children and older are independent. Mr. Ramzi Ashohati say of Dearborn, I assume saying as a Dearborn parent or as a parent of Dearborn students, I'm frustrated that the board is considering changing the restart criteria so that kids can return in person sooner than it is safe. Students first is the district's mantra to show that by valuing and putting the safety of everyone first instead of caving to the pressure from outside. Use data to determine safety and stick to the safety metrics that were approved. Yes, the governor's order recommends a return to in-person by March 1st, but it does not require it. The board has previously voted that positivity rates above 5% were too dangerous for a safe return to in-person, and nothing has changed to show that higher numbers above 5% positivity rates are safer. Although our numbers are decreasing, our county rates are currently 8.6% positivity rate. If you are patient, we will get under 5% and restart schools without jeopardizing safety. Has the district even asked our teachers how they feel. Some of you board members ran on the support of the teachers union to show them that support now. It would be very hard to believe that anyone would be in favor of sacrificing safety in order to go back sooner. Also, the state's plan allows districts to opt in to receive rapid testing kits so that they can test staff weekly. Is that the district going to opt in for that? If not, then why not? Fatima of Dearborn saying, hello, my name is Fatima. I have two children that attend public schools. One child has an IEP and is on the spectrum. His teachers decided that it would be best for my son to be in a regular classroom so that he socializes with other kids. However, that the schools have been closed, there has been no socialization. With that being said, he is struggling with online, unable to understand the work, and now he is behind. I have noticed regression and an increase in language delay. Early intervention and socialization are extremely important for kids with autism. I know many parents with IEP and without can agree with me that kids are struggling. Online does not compare to in person learning, or else there would be no teachers or schools. So please, please open the schools. Having the schools closed will have a long term negative effect on these kids. I know the board is worried about safety. However, with proper PPE, and now that there is a vaccine, we can go back. I have worked with positive COVID patients on a daily basis throughout this pandemic and managed to not have COVID diagnosed by donning proper PPE. It can be done. Our kids can be in school while keeping our teachers safe. Education is essential, teachers are essential, and bringing our kids back in the classroom should be essential. Thank you for your time and thank you for that you do. Take care. Mr. Hamoud Shohati of Dearborn saying schools should wait until it is safe to return. Do not change the metrics for safety. We should stick to having 2 weeks under a 5% positivity rate before sending kids back to school. Why should we be risking our lives or our families when COVID's still dangerous? And now there are new strands in Michigan that are more contagious. When things are safe, go back, but it's not safe now. Mr. Gavin Buckley of Detroit said, I would like this comment to be a reminder to the board and anyone listening to the board this afternoon that Governor Whitmer's expectation that districts provide in-person learning by March 1st, just that is an expectation. There is no force of law behind it. There is no policy or legislation. Ultimately, the decision of when and how to return is a responsibility of the Dearborn School Board. The safety of Dearborn families, students, and staff rests in the hands of the board's decision today. As of now, the Wayne County COVID positive rate is 6.01%, a whole percent above the Department of Health recommendations for reopening of in-person schooling. The 7-day average for cases in Wayne County is 1,838. This is over 1,000 cases higher than it was when schools were first moved online back in March 2020. Those two indicators, the spend and breadth of disease spread, are the two metrics that should be monitored before considering in-person learning. 6% positive rates or case rates and over 1,800 cases a week is not the time to start discussing returning to school. The science says it's not safe. Why go against the science? K-12 educators like myself have been lucky enough to receive our first dose of the vaccine. Many of my coworkers have been struggling to make appointments in Wayne County. I'll remind the board that the vaccine takes 2 doses 21 days apart, and then it takes additional 21 days after the second dose before the vaccine is considered effective at producing systematic immunity. That means that the only staff that have been vaccinated so far have any chance of reaching immunity by March 1st. I hope that we can agree that with vaccination just around the corner, it would be wholly irresponsible to send staff members and students back to the buildings unvaccinated. It's no secret that there is a new strand of virus spreading 40 to 70% faster than the original strains. Cases of this strain have been found in multiple locations across Michigan, and it can be assumed at this point that is either the dominant or close to the dominant strain in the state. The question that he has saying, why open schools for in-person learning when most of staff aren't vaccinated? Most families aren't vaccinated. Virus still at stage. Um, it's gotten more infectious than ever, and there is no legal precedent to force the opening of in-person learning. I'm a teacher. I want to be with my students. I want to be in my classroom, but I could never do that knowing that I could harm them, their families, or me and my family. We're all tired of this disease. Rash decisions will not make this better. Please remain virtual until science and vaccine distribution demonstrate that it's safe to reopen. Mrs. Ashohati saying, why are you trying to change the safety metrics to make it easier to go back? You should focus on the safety, not the politics to reopen. Our numbers should stay with what was agreed, 2 weeks under 5%, and not to change it to a higher number. This is crazy that you say that you care about your staff and the students, but you want to push them to go back at a higher rates. Wait until rates go down, then reopen. Also, the governor's plan gives the districts an option to have free rapid testing to staff weekly. Will you be signing up for that? That you have the rapid testing and kits in the district? Are you going to make sure that everyone wants the vaccine gets it before you make them go back? If not, why force them back into an unsafe situation? Wayne County does not have enough vaccines and even canceled appointments because they don't have enough. Mr. Adam said, hello, I'm a seventh grader at Lori Middle School. I strongly argue that students should not go back in person learning until the next year. It would be hard. It would be hard enough to learn and get used to the online learning schedule. So why go back to school in person and have to get back used to that? It would be a hassle. Also, I'm worried about my health and the health of others. Not everybody is the safest when it comes to washing their hands, keeping their distance, and keeping their masks on. Vote no for in-person learning, students first. Um, Kay Calif says, thanks for the amazing job you have done this year. Please consider the following. One, peak vaccination will not happen until summer, so why risk it now? Two, kids should end the year feeling accomplished for all the efforts and hard work that their teachers have put in. So why add unwelcome, unburden, and stress they close out the year? Three, why would not a test pilot by requiring teachers to teach in class so they can get reacclimated to the classroom, ask a few students from each class to volunteer, have mock exercises to work out the kinks, all while teachers or while teaching live and online to students at home. This will help us understand what would actually happen and fix issues before sending students back prematurely. If considering the students as priority, then don't make them feel unsafe since very few have been vaccinated. If considering the teachers, then set them up for success by empowering them to work out the kinks so they can start off the year confident. Either way, please plan, test, adjust, then execute. Anything less would be premature and would not reflect on such great district leadership. The vote no. Good luck. Mr. Connor Knopp of Dearborn, we must go back to school. We are miserable. The district has invested so much in going back to school, and it is all going to waste. Vaccinate every staff member and get us back in the building. Even if we send a fifth of the student body back to school for 1 day a week, it would drastically improve the mental health of students and staff. Mrs. Maureen Borich of Dearborn saying, could you please consider and take an accounting of the number of Chromebooks that will be needed as an additional resource in each individual classroom across the district? Scenarios such as students not bringing individual devices from home will occur. Batteries by the end of the day will be dead. How will it be possible for students to charge devices that will be needed for each class period? They they all will not be seated next to outlets for charging. Therefore, adequate numbers or number of Chromebooks on hand in the classroom will be a necessity. Having them in the building is not the best option or the best solution. Think of the time lost trying to request one for a student and then the wait time for one to be delivered. Furthermore, there is the time that it will take for the device to boot up the students to log in. Just making sure that, okay. Furthermore, there's time it will be for the students, okay. In a 40-minute period, there is a lot of lost time. The best solution is to have a multitude of devices available in the classrooms. In order for the plan laid out to be effective and efficient, all technology must be readily available and in working order. The shelf on the refurbished systems is running low due to social distancing in the classroom, as well as managing teaching from behind. A desk is more important than ever. The infrastructure in place in every classroom. Uh, the daily time structure is not allowing for tech glitch problems and implementation. Therefore, in my humble opinion, at a district level, in order for the person for in-person plan, which includes Zoom in the room, addressing and investigating adequate preparedness in the tech area needs to be addressed. Thank you for allowing me to present one of my concerns. Mrs. Batul saying, sure that many students like me will agree when I say that the idea of going back to the buildings for in-person schooling this year is quite frankly dreadful. I understand that the district will do their best to keep us safe. However, I'm not confident that students will be keeping a responsible distance from each other. Besides the more obvious concern of safety, I feel that a switch this late in the school year is impracticable. I, for one, am not prepared for any supplies and back to school shopping at this time. Not something that I feel is right. In the beginning of the year, I chose to stay with DPS because I trusted that the right decisions will be made. I do not believe that it is right or will be beneficial in any way for students to be taken back to the buildings for schooling this year. But I do hope that the upcoming school year will be time of much better circumstance. Please consider that if the decision to go back to school is made, many students, including myself, will face anxiety, uncertainty, which can be prevented by simply staying online. Thank you for taking my student voice into consideration. Mrs. Amal Farhat of Dearborn saying, I know cases are starting to go down and kids have been in school and kids have to be in schools in person. But even if the precautions like checking the kids' fever before entering the school or classes, sometimes kids and teachers might have the coronavirus and they do not have the symptoms and they will spread the virus among each other at school and they will give it to their parents and families. I have two kids and they are doing good on online learning, and it is my responsibility to teach my kids, even if it is hard, but I want my kids to be safe. If kids go back to school, I think cases are going to go up again, especially now that they're talking about the new coronavirus that's spreading faster than COVID-19. There is only 4 months left. Please Parents, be patient, and kids can go back to school when cases completely improve to be on the safe side. Thank you. Mrs. Inas Abbas of Dearborn saying, I do feel safe to send my kids back to school because of COVID-19 is still alive and dangers them to my family. It is too risky to send them back in person. Mr. Qasim Abdurrahman of Dearborn saying, can you please reopen schools? Governor announced reopening restaurants and we need schools to open. My kids are struggling with online learning. We do have an anonymous comment um, on the same lines about sticking to the 5% metric and saying this is happening very rapidly and the pandemic situation is very fluid. Mrs. Mashrah of Dearborn saying, as a parent of a Dearborn resident or as a parent of Dearborn student, I'm extremely disappointed that the board is considering changing the restart criteria so that kids, I believe I already read this comment. Um, so I will go to the next one. Miss Helen Hetrick said, online school is detrimental to my success. Information is harder to understand and students are not given the same amount of individual attention and help needed. Families worried that the risk of school had the option to do the virtual learning program, but for many other family members, going back to school is worth the risk of exposure. Mr. Luke Hetrick of Dearborn saying the district has a large percentage of at-risk students between 75% and students classified as low income and a large number of ELL learners. Online learning is a struggle for these families. Families are uncomfortable with in-person learning, have a plenty of opportunity to opt in, or had plenty of opportunity to opt in into the virtual learning program, VLP. Now that teachers are starting to get vaccinated, there is no reason not to go back once the number of cases come down. As a senior, I understand that my senior year is lost. No homecoming, no winter sports, no prom, and maybe no graduation. But right now, it feels like my education is becoming part of the group. Online learning is hard for a lot of students, and it feels like education is no longer a priority of the board. Lots of schools have gone back without major hiccups. The CDC recommends going back, and our new president wants students back in person. Put the choice of education back in the hands of families. Let people make their own decisions on what they consider safe or unsafe for their family. We do have an anonymous comment going at the same lines that we don't want our kids to go back when we don't have proper ventilation or proper PPE. Miss Alisa Razgunas of Dearborn saying, I'm concerned about details that will be used to monitor and inform our decision making once we reopen. Staggered reopening should be more gradual to keep tabs on possible safety concerns and making sure staff, students, and families continue to ensure safety measures. As someone with compromised immune system, I cannot wait for my vaccine to feel safer despite the effectiveness being lower than my peers without health concerns. But this pace is not consistent with this goal. Please give us more time, or please give us time to protect ourselves. If haste makes waste, I hope it isn't at the sake of the well-being of our community. And that's the end of citizen participation, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Trustee Moses. We'll give you a minute or two, get yourself a drink of water and the
Thanks.
rest we can take it.